What's up, everyone? I'm the Kaijin Okami from the Toku and Animation News Network here at Fan Expo Denver 2025, and I am in conversation with
Larry Houston. I'm the producer director of the X-Men, the original series, and I'm also the consultant producer on X-Men 97.
Remember to click like, subscribe, the bell notification, and whatever else YouTube has you clicking on to support us. Welcome to Fan Expo Denver. Is this your first time here?
Oh yes, I've never been to Denver before. I'm having a wonderful time. Altitude is a little bit, has to get used to, because I came from a place that's only 500 feet above sea level. This is a little bit, you know, but I'm adjusting.
Have you been seeing a lot of traction at your table?
Oh yes, especially Friday, Saturday. It's been a lot of folks come by. A lot of great creative costumes that have been, you know, the few that come by my table here, I try and grab as many costumes, photographs as I can. You know, because everybody's here is very creative. I love it.
Now, going back before you got into animation, you first started out as like a computer analyst.
Yeah.
What made you go into that route first and then got you into the animation field?
Well, my initial idea was leave high school, work for DC or Marvel, but it didn't work out because I didn't know anybody and I was too poor. So that idea went away. So I had to find something to support myself. So I got a scholar. I got a grant, actually. Not a grant, but whatever you call it when you don't have to pay back. To control data, to do computer repair. So I did. I graduated, got hired by several companies over the last 7 years to be a computer repair person, and it was within the last 7 years of doing that kind of work. I was working for Digital, Data General, Honeywell. The last one was McDonnell Douglas Aerospace as a systems analyst. And it's that 25th year, I was like, I'm just getting antsy, you know, because you fix a computer, you run diagnostics, which takes about a half an hour. So I'm sitting there waiting, just drawing my cartoons, you know, and it's like, I kept doing that so often. I'm going, I need to see if I can make it as an artist. And I knew people who had been hired by Disney, by Hanna-Barbera, and by Warner Brothers, and I talked to them. And I said, well, in the business back then, they hire you in January, they fire you in September, they hire you in January. It's that kind of cycle. So I figured out when they were hiring, and that's when I went out and took a test. Actually, I took a test for a layout artist, failed it twice. But the guy in charge of layout saw my portfolio and saw that I could do storyboards. So he introduced me to the storyboard supervisor. He gave me a test, brought it back the next day, and I didn't realize it, but it was a live script. Everybody's working on the same script, right? He liked my drawing so much, he put it into the show and hired me the same day. And that's how I got into the business that way. And I was in the business, my God, let's see, 36 years before I retired. I actually retired in 2016. I was out. I had done my time, and I was just having fun. And then Disney bought the rights back from Fox. And then Disney called me up to become a consultant producer on the series. So I was there from the beginning, 2020 and 2021, something like that.
Nice. Yeah. And so you got your start at Filmation?
Yes.
With Thundar the Barbarian?
No, that was Ruby Spears.
Okay.
I got started on, it was actually a show called Sport Billy, which was a cartoon that Filmation was doing for another country which nobody ever saw. That was technically the first, but everything else was like, I was working on Tarzan, Lone Ranger, Flash Gordon. Did that for about a year, you know, then they let you go. Then I got hired again by Marvel Productions. Art Vitolo and Stan Lee hired me to work on that to finish off the syndicated Spider-Man. And then from that point on, I worked for Marvel Productions for about another 11 years now, without breaking, without that higher fire. No, it was like 11 years of continuous work. So I was like, yes, I loved it.
What does it feel like, though, that you were the first African American to do work on Saturday morning cartoons?
You know, at the time, I had no clue. I was just happy to have a job, get paid. I was happy. But it wasn't until like maybe about 20 years ago, Floyd Norman was actually the first black animator at Disney. And we're at lunch. And he made a casual comment that, you broke a glass ceiling. The story, I had, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, and he told me that there had never been a black artist who had been hired for that position. Like, other people had done storyboards, but never been hired at that job level. So I went back to talk to my friends, back when I got hired, and they went, yeah, you were the first guy. I went, oh shit, I didn't know that.
It's quite an accomplishment. On one hand, it's kind of said it took that long,
right?
But the fact that you get to own that aspect is just amazing, especially because you also were the first one who brought Black Panther to the cartoon world.
Yeah, that was one of the main things that I wanted to do when I was hired to do the second season of Fantastic Four. I told him I want to do the classic stories, the one with Daredevil, the Bring Out the Humans, and the Black Panther. And we took the first 2 issues that he appeared in, we mushed it all into one episode. And I made sure I deliberately art directed it so that the imagery matched those first 2 issues. And I was really proud of that. And we got a excellent voice actor, Keith David, who's actually getting a star on a Hollywood walkway. This soon.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite actors. So.
Yes, and so I got him to play. He's the first guy to play T'Challa. I was really proud to have selected him for that role. And it was. I'm really proud of that. Just like the X-Men, I'm really proud of finally doing the first Black Panther the correct way.
Damn, how are you gonna get that out of there?
Now, besides X-Men, which was an accomplishment in its own with the '92 tune, you also did the Pride of the X-Men. Cartoon. What was that like, where it was where you were just starting basics of what eventually evolved into the full-blown tune?
We had high hopes for that. It was myself, Rick Hoberg, Will Mineo, and the lead executive, her name was Margaret Lesh, and she spearheaded finding the funding for it, and for us to do an X-Men show. And we had high hopes we were going to sell an X-Men show way back in the mid-'80s. And so we had an excellent overseas team. I think it's Toy Animation. We had what we thought was a great script, introduction of Kitty Pryde into the X-Men. But in the zeitgeist was wrong or whatever, but CBS, NBC, ABC all passed. So we didn't get anything past the pilot. And I've had grown people come by, and now I'm going, they were waiting for episode 2. And I was like, sorry, there was only a pilot. But
now your roster was interesting because you had the main Claremont characters, but you also threw Dazzler into the mix.
Yes.
What was the decision behind that?
Just so you don't have just one female, just so you have, and her powers are interesting because she's got light, the light energy powers and stuff. It just made it's very visual for the show, and just to balance out the team so it's not all boys there. I mean, we got Storm. Now we got at least two. We got Storm and we got Dazzler. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. This one right here. That's a little print I made of the group.
It's pretty awesome. This is kind of like my definitive. For these 4, my definitive favorite designs of them.
Yes.
Because I'm a huge fan of Claremont's run, especially the early stuff that he did with Cockrum and Byrne, up through Magneto's revelation when he's like, wait, maybe I am going about it the wrong way.
Yeah. One of the key things about this, when we designed this version, we based the art on Dave Cockrum's version. And so when we did the other version in 1992, we based it off of Jim Lee's version. So we just tried to do what was current in the books and put that on the screen. So that's why there's a little bit of a different look. These models were designed by the comic book artist Russ Heath did these, and the ones that were for '92 were designed by Rick Hoberg.
Now, you also had the pleasure of having to try to adapt some more mature stories into children's cartoons such as Swamp Thing and Conan. What was that like?
That was a whole bunch of compromise.
I will say, despite being childish for Conan, I really liked that they had still adapted actual Howard stories into that show.
We did our best to make it Saturday morning friendly because the audience between 7 and 12, and we know what Swamp Thing can do, we know what Conan can do, so it was a version of the show that was adapted, and so there was compromise in, obviously in the writing, and then in the action sequences, knowing that we're going to be scrutinized, so we had to be, let's say, creative and how to do stuff, because otherwise you get the sense of saying, no, you can't do that now. So we've run into that wall before, so you know how to maybe dance around it to get the same effect, but just not the same punch in the face.
Well, I will say, being a kid at that time, those are my introductions to those characters, and now they're some of my favorite characters of all time.
Excellent.
I love the works. So if it wasn't for those tunes and the toys that came out with them, I probably would not have been as big of a fan of those properties as I am.
Well, that's good to hear, because the purists have one version that they want to see, but our version at least was accessible to some at your age when you saw it, so that it gave you like the seed of like curiosity, so that you could seek out and find out more about it. So that, in that aspect, I guess we did a good job.
And one other thing I did love about Conan the Adventurer was it had like a definitive story going throughout the whole thing with an actual ending. Like, Ramamon escaped at the end, but Rathamon was the central villain, and he was defeated, so everything was like at this definitive conclusion at the end, which wasn't something you really had for cartoons back then. Yeah,
and the networks always frowned on that quite a bit, because they were like, well, what if it's shown out of sequence? The kids are gonna get confused and blah blah blah. And it's like they really didn't have a lot of confidence that kids could figure stuff out. So getting that through politically with the networks took a lot of dancing around. It's like, don't worry about it. We can make it work.
Well, and that's funny because I don't know about other areas, but where I grew up in New York, Spider-Man the anime series, when they did the season, all the subsequent seasons 2 onward as chapters, they didn't even do those chapters in order. 1 week you'd have like chapter 6 aired, then you'd have reruns for a few weeks, then the next week, the next time they did a new episode was chapter 9. And you're like, but what about 7 and 8? So,
oh my God,
having that where they're like, they must be shown in order, or it's like, but you didn't even air them in order in the first place, because even X-Men wasn't aired in order.
Right. So, for us, when we did the X-Men, we tried to get around it by having a recap at the head, previously on X-Men, that kind of thing, so that we could at least get kids caught up with key scenes, so they can figure out what the plot is. So if it is thrown out of sequence when they show it, at least you won't get too lost. So that was our way to get around if it's shown out of sequence. But I'd never heard it. 5 that's crazy.
Yeah, it was interesting just as a kid, like, and then later on they would air the episodes they skipped at one point that came after the whole story arc had ended.
What can I say? It's the syndication market. Everything was being controlled by whatever the local stations were, and if they didn't have any empathy for the kids, like, let's show 6, no, let's show 9. They just didn't.
Well, it's like with even Disney on their DVDs, they put some of the animated episodes out of sequence because they put like the Purple Man episode and the Longshot episode that go between the 2 Phoenix sagas onto season 4's DVD set. So you have to go to that set before you continue if you want to do them in order.
Yeah, because what Disney did, unfortunately, they didn't talk to us when they did that, and they followed the air dates, which meant that they were out of sequence. Where if they had talked to us, like, no, this should go here, this should go here, if they had talked to us, but they just followed the air dates, and that's why everything was wrong.
Now, what is, in your animation career, is there something that you are most proud of?
Other than X-Men, it's going to be Johnny Quest. because that was the other show that I had. I was pretty much like a showrunner on it. I controlled the art, and we worked directly with the writers, so we could figure out where the story was going to go, how much each episode was going to cost, because we had to figure out backgrounds, character designs, all that stuff, because we had to stay within the budget. But I had total creative control over those shows, like this one. And so for me, Johnny Quest would be the number 2. And also, it's a show that I grew up, that excited me as a kid in the 60s. The original Johnny Quest was something that, I mean, I was like this, watching it, enjoying the music, the drama. Was something I really got into my imagination. And the fact is, these kids never went to school. They're out there having fun. I mean, they had jet packs, they had jet skis, they were like going across the world. Going, I want to be one of those kids in that adventure, because that was like so much fun.
Well, one of my standouts favorite episodes from that series were the Ezekiel Rage ones. But it seemed like they kept changing his design in every episode that he appeared in.
Yeah, because there was a creative team before us that did Johnny Quest, and then my team with David Story, we did the second batch of Johnny Quest, where it looked so different, and we just.
And I think Dr. Quest had a different voice actor for that as well.
Yeah, we did a recast and redo, because we wanted to make our version. I know it's totally different from the season 1, but David Story and I are very passionate Johnny Quest fans, but we grew up with it as a kid. So we wanted our version to be like the original one, but maybe the kids are just aged up a little bit, but still within that age range of the first one. And that's why things changed a lot.
I enjoyed it for what it was,
yeah.
Despite the obviously dated CGI effects. It was a show I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Now, what have you been doing with yourself since you have retired?
When I retired in 2016. I had the joy of doing nothing or something, whatever I wanted to do. Wake up late, wake up early. It was like great. And I started going to conventions and stuff and having fun, like coming here at conventions like this and talking to the fans. It was great being retired, but it was like I retired in 2016, and then 2020, that's when Disney called me up, and that's the only show I probably would have ever come out of retirement for, was this show right here. Otherwise, any other shows, like, nah, I'll stay home.
What if it was Ninja Turtles?
Ninja Turtle, well, that's a good draw, but they've changed everything. You know, I grew up with the 80s. The one I was there when it first started. They did the miniseries, I did part of that. And then when they got to 65 episodes, I was a part of that. And that gave me a taste of the writers would write gags, and they allowed the artists to be collaborative. Like, we can take the gags and make it bigger, funnier, and have some fun with it. And that's the first time they gave me a taste of, like, you know, adding to the success of the show was Ninja Turtles. So I had a lot of good fond memories of that too. But you know, it's gone in a new direction, so new kids can take it. You know, I like the old stuff that I grew up with.
Yes, same here.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online?
You can find me online. Let's see, I'm on Instagram, Larry Toons, like cartoons, 54. You can find me on Facebook under just Larry Houston, and my Gmail, is Larry Toons, like Larry Toons Media, MEDIA @gmail. So they can contact me in those two places. And, you know, chit chat and stuff like that. Yeah, so those are three good ones.
Any final words for our viewers?
I want to thank the original viewers of the X-Men back in 1982, because without your help to make the show #1, we would have never had season 2. So I have to always thank you guys, because nobody believed in the show but the fans and me. That's it. Oh, and one executive. Her name is Margaret Lash, because she could greenlight a show, and even her boss, I found out way later, her boss said the X-Men was a mistake. Why are you putting it on the air? And she said she believed in the show, and he told her that, you know, if the X-Men crashes and burns, it's going to be her job. And he said, "Do you still believe in the show?" And she said, "Yep." So I always thank the fans and Margaret Lash for helping me put the X-Men out there, because it's something I grew up with as a kid from elementary school. It's my passion. So especially season 1, it's all me, because I was like, except for the scripts, I was the showrunner for the whole show. And I tried to make it the best show I could, you know, for not only the fans but for everybody. So thank you.
And I love how much you took the material from the Claremont era for X-Men.
Oh yeah.
That really helped when I was reading the Claremont era. I'm like, these were like my favorite episodes from the series. Now I get to see how the original iterations of them.
Yeah, like when we did Days of Future Past, since we didn't have Kitty Pryde,
right,
we figured another time traveler would be Bishop, and that was like a great idea because that made everything work so well. Yeah, because you had these. I mean, we had Bishop, a male personality. Wolverine, a male personality, Gambit. I mean, it was like a great conversation to write and to stage. You know, it was good. And with the Phoenix Saga, most people don't know this, but there was no internet back then, guys. So I had to bring my long box of comic books to work. I had to Xerox pages off and then hand it off to all the different departments to make sure that the costumes are right, the colors are right. And even the storyboard guys, I said, there's panels from the comic book that if you can include into the show, put it in the show. And if some people did, some people didn't, but a lot of times that they didn't, I put them in. Yeah.
It was well worth it.
Yeah, it worked out great. I'm glad you guys appreciate it, and you did too.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Until next time, bye.
Bye-bye.